You know, where they go to the ATMs
Yeah.
and they buy a $10 coffee, their bank has less money in the account because they haven't cleared checks, perhaps, that they deposited, and now there's a $25 or $35 fee for the overdraft protection. So, you know, people think about those ATM debit cards as credit cards, too. They're not exactly credit cards, so there are different rules, but you can incur these fees, exorbitant fees, on making 5 purchases for $5 each and having another 5, $25 or $35 overdraft protection fees. You got to watch those things.
With regard to the late fees and when the payments are due, previously we would get bills about 2 weeks prior to the amount being due. Now, under this new law, they have to mail the bill out to us at least 21 days prior to the date due. Okay, so that's a significant change. The other thing that's a significant change is what I call the mailbox rule. We learned that in law school, which is it's effective from the date of mailing, not from the date of receipt. So everybody's been a victim of this. You mail your payment, it's due on the 1st of the month, you mail it on, let's say, the 20th of the previous month. Now, for whatever reason, it's snail mail or it's, you know, by Pony Express, and they claim they never receive it. What happens? We get charged a late fee. If now under this rule, if we provide them with evidence, which is a copy of even the envelope with the stamp, you can provide the credit card company with evidence that it was mailed at least 7 days prior to the due date. They cannot charge you any late fees.
But if you mailed it in and they didn't receive it, the credit card company would get the stamped date of when it was arriving, but you wouldn't have proof.
We'd have proof as when it was mailed.
You'd have to get the proof that it's mailed.
Jackie's suggesting perhaps that you photocopy it when you mail it.
That's right.
Have them stamp it right then, hand cancel it so that you would have proof of that. Isn't it a shame that, I suppose this is rhetorical, but isn't it a shame that you should have to do that? It would seem that there would be enough time that you would have before they start accruing interest charges. But of course, on their end, when they issue a statement, they may backdate. What keeps them from backdating it to February 1st when in fact you receive it on February 17th, you happen to be on vacation, you didn't get it until the 28th, and the next thing you know, you've got a fee before you even open up the envelope.
That's a good point. The other change in this law mandate is that the bill has to be due on the same date every single month.
Which is a good thing.
It can't be, this is the billing cycle, this is the billing cycle. If the date falls on a weekend, okay, that date, the old date used to apply. Now, who's there on a weekend to open checks? But now, if the due date falls on a weekend, and it inevitably will, then the date becomes due, the payment becomes due the next legal day, or if it's on a holiday, it's the next legal business day. So that stops them from charging the late fees.
Now, communication is supposed to be another major factor. It's supposed to be improved so that a consumer understands better what he's up against. Case in point, anecdotally, I will share this with you, that a bill came in that was from a store. And I knew exactly the date that it was purchased, and I knew exactly how much it cost. When that statement came in, it was about $8 more. New balance, the tear-off sheet said $8 more. And I knew, because it was only one purchase, exactly what it should be, and that wasn't it. So I called the credit card company and had explored this with them. And they said, oh no, Ms. Moraes, you don't have to worry about that. You pay on time, so you really can pay the amount that was shown farther up in the earlier part of the statement under transactions and purchases. However, that statement, the tearback piece, said new balance, and it was the higher amount. So now the onus becomes on the consumer to see that they shouldn't be paying the new balance as it's listed there, but rather to go back and check new purchases or new transactions and pay just and only that if they know they're paying in time. Now, understanding that they're supposed to be changing the law, this was before the 22nd, they're supposed to change the law so that you know that you pay this amount more if you don't pay by. Is that what the law is supposed to do? Is it supposed to list, pay this amount more if you don't pay by?
They're required to disclose on the front of their statements or somewhere conspicuous on the statement. They have to disclose which is an amortization schedule. This is what's going to happen if you pay this bill, minimum payment, over the next 3 years, okay? And I think the 3-year is the cutoff. Now, anybody can go on the internet and plug in a number and say, well, if I have a $10,000 balance and I pay the minimum payment at 18% interest rate, it's going to tell you how long it's going to take you, probably about 30 years to pay it off, and how much are you paying back in interest. But it does have to be disclosed on the front of the statement.
The other thing, this just goes back to what we said at the beginning. You really have to carefully look at your bills now that you're getting these under the new act, because there will be disclosures that you wouldn't have had before, such as the schedule of payoff, as Jackie just described. And you want to look carefully at, what do I have to pay? What's the exact amount I pay so I don't have to pay interest? And what are the changes if I pay by the grace period, if I don't pay? That information will be on each bill. And read the bill carefully.
Again, that caveat emptor. I understand that those who have had a change in the interest rate, there's something called a 2-cycle billing. You pay a certain amount on the balance that was previous and a certain amount on the new charge.
Oh, I know what you're talking
Explain
about.
what that's about. That's a very interesting way that...
You're talking about the interest rate, whatever the interest rate, how they were applying payments. When a credit card company gets your payment, and part of your purchases have been by a cash advance, and part have been just store purchases, your payment, the first part of your payment is supposed to apply to the part of the card that's charging a higher interest. So, for instance, your card always charges you more interest if you're making a cash advance, okay? Fine print, again, they always charge more interest for whatever reason, I have no idea. If that's the case, then your minimum payment should be applied towards the higher part of that bill of the cash advance. And then the rest would be applied towards the other remaining...
Did they change that in this new
That's
law?
what it is now.
Because
yeah.
it was...
They just apply it.
If you also remember, you sometimes would get checks from your credit card company, transfer your balances from
Yeah.
other cards, and they have these promotional rates of
Yes.
6% or 0% or whatever it is, plus a fee for the transfer. And in the old days, prior to February 22nd, those would get paid first, and the higher interest rates would continue to run at the full rate.
Now it
Beware.
has to, card payments have to be applied to the debt with the highest interest rate. So namely, that's usually the cash advance or the little convenience
Right.
checks that David was talking about. And any remaining goes to the balance of the lower interest rate.
So another issue now about not if you have a card, but if you are likely to get a new card. Knowing that the credit card companies have some new restrictions imposed on them about how much they can spike rates arbitrarily, as they didn't previously, there is an issue apparently for the new card applicant, where they might be charged at a higher rate. Now, is the best way to approach that, ask what the rate is going to be, and then still go online and check what comparable rates are? Because I can't imagine that if you go into a store and you know if you haven't had a card there, they're quick to say you'll get 20% off the purchase, whatever, but your interest rate could be some exorbitant amount because you're a new card holder,
Right.
a new card customer. Is that a very big problem for new card people to be aware of?
There's a couple of problems for new card people. One of the changes is the credit card companies can't issue credit cards to college students
Yep.
as they're going at 18 years old. You have to be 21 now to get a credit card.
On your own?
On your
Or
own.
you have to have a cosigner.
If you want it as a college student you can't get it on your own, you have to have a cosigner. So a lot of college students, that's good in the sense that a lot of them would get these cards, charge them to the hilt, which was probably only $500 or $1,000, and then be stuck with the balance that they couldn't pay off. And so they ruined their credit before they started. But on the flip side of that, there were kids who were responsible and used it to build credit. So it's in some ways too bad that you throw everyone into the same pile there, because How do you build credit as a young person now?
There's always the unless in this bill, and the unless to what David's talking about is if you're under 21 and you can't get a cosigner because the law requires a cosigner, the unless